to continue in Genesis 31. We continue in verse 31 and finish in verse 35. Laban caught up to Jacob and asked him, Why? Why did you run away? And why have you stolen my gods? Well, today we see Jacob's answer. We'll read from verses 31 to 35, and then we'll unpack these verses. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, Because I was afraid, for I said, Peradventure thou wouldst take by force thy daughters from me. With whomsoever thou findest thy gods, let him not live. Before our brethren, discern thou what is thine with me, and take it to thee. For Jacob knew not that Rachel had stolen them. And Laban went into Jacob's tent, and then into Leah's tent, and into the two maidservants' tents, but he found them not. Then went he out of Leah's tent and entered into Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the images and put them in the camel's furniture and sat upon them. And Laban searched all the tent, but found them not. And she said to her father, Let it not displease my lord, that I cannot rise up before thee, for the custom of women is upon me. And he searched, but found not the images. You see, Laban had two charges against Jacob. First, he moved out in secret without notifying him. And second, he suspected Jacob for stealing his household idols. Now, to the first charge, Jacob actually told the truth. I was afraid. Folks, that was a problem with all of the men, the men that were our patriarchs. Abraham was at one time afraid. Isaac was at one time afraid. And now Jacob says, I was afraid. You see, God, the Bible never hides our weaknesses. It highlights our strengths, but shows our weaknesses as well. And that should be an encouragement to all of us. Despite our weaknesses, God sees our potentials. Now Jacob feared lest Laban should by force take away his daughters, and so oblige him to continue in his services with him. But as to the second charge of stealing Laban's gods, he pleads not guilty. Why should he? Jacob only believed in one God. Why should he even think of an idol? He not only didn't take them himself, but he did not know they were taken, nor that Rachel had them. With whomsoever thou findest thy gods, let him not live. This is rashly said. If there was a chance at all, Jacob should have said nothing. But he did. Taking this as an open opportunity to search for his property, Laban went into Jacob's tent, his first suspect. Then he went into Leah's tent, whom next to Jacob he might suspect of taking them also, out of veneration to them and Jacob. But this was not to be either. The tents of Bilhah and Zilpah also produced no results. Leah was the oldest. She grew up in the household. She was trained to venerate the household gods. Bilhah and Zilpah also were from that culture. And they also would have worshipped those gods. But isn't it amazing? They did not take the idols. See, I believe he double-checked Leah's tent before he entered into Rachel's tent, which he examined last of all, as he least suspected her. Laban may have assumed Rachel was less addicted to the superstition and idolatry of his family than Leah and the maidservants. But he definitely would have been wrong. I believe Rachel did steal them to make sure her husband would be the head of the family, underestimating that Jacob placed no value on idols. So upon hearing her father inquire about these idols, and her husband giving permission to search for them and to be put to death, whoever should be found to be in possession of them, Rachel took these images and placed them into the camel's furniture and sat upon them. Now, the camel's furniture were a very, very fancy saddle that would be put on the camel. The saddle was outfitted with a reclining type of contraption where you could recline while traveling. And I believe Rachel was reclining on this as it was resting on the floor of her tent. So she lay on it, or she sat on it. And it says here, she had placed these idols into the camel's furniture and sat upon them. Laban searched the whole tent, except where Rachel was sitting, of course, but found nothing. So just in case we were wondering, why didn't they tell Rachel to move? Or why didn't they bodily move Rachel so they could check where she was sitting? Moses had to add verse 35. And this is where she said to her father, "Let my Lord be angry that I cannot rise up before thee." Actually, in the Hebrew, it says, "Let not my Lord be burning with wrath that I cannot rise up before you. For the manner of women is upon me." And he searched, but did not find those teraphim. Now, this verse occurred at the same time as verse 34, where they were checking, and was giving an explanation of why Rachel did not get up. In that time, as well as later on, in those times it was customary for children, regardless of age, to stand in the presence of their parents when the parents were in the room. But Rachel claimed to be at that time a month that women have. So as a result, no wonder the household gods were never found. None of Laban's men, nor Laban, would even go near Rachel or the camel's furniture for fear of being defiled. So other than the camel's furniture. The 3 times the phrase "he found not" occurred in verses 33 to 35. This emphasizes the thoroughness of Laban's search and also the completeness of Laban's deception. Laban was out-deceived by his very own and favorite daughter. What irony. Laban traveled for 7 days in vain to find his precious idols. No matter how powerful he thought his personal household gods were, they were nothing at all compared to God. You see, I found many of my fellow Christians to have certain superstitions which they thought overpowered God and decided to stick by them. But God is more powerful. One of these things I'm talking about is the superstition about number 13 and how unlucky it is. I find it even amusing when people say, let's go to a potluck. Folks, luck has nothing to do with anything. It either falls under God's will or it doesn't. In our Sunday school class, we even said pod grace. It may be funny, but a lot of people believe in Lady Luck. And many of them are Christians. Throw that belief out. Compared to God, all of that is nothing.